Hello everybody. Today is July the 22nd, 2022. July 22nd, 2022. What I was showing you before is my poppy flowers. Can't really see what I'm looking at. That's the pod. That's like here. These just opened. These particular flowers just opened. These were spent flowers. That bigger one opened about a week before this smaller one. Trying to get some sun on it. I'm blocking the sun actually. Anyway, I'm coming to tell a dream, so let me get to it. The blueberries are all done. So I gotta look up how to take care of those for the next season. Here's a tomato that's starting to ripen. That's nice. That'll be a brandywine. Although they're not getting very big like a brandywine. They're not really shaped like my other brandywines. So I wonder if it's a mortgage lifter, because the leaves look more like this. Right? See that leaf? I know that that's a mortgage lifter because it managed to survive having a label. And look at that leaf. And look at this leaf. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't. This is more of a true spear. And then this has some, yeah, here's side by side. Nah, they're different. So that's a mortgage lifter. This is probably a brandywine. This is a brandywine. And it's this true spear. Huh. Or quote unquote potato leaf. And ironically, potatoes and brandywines are related. So what I was doing there was taking that little blossom, the flower that it comes from, taking that off. I'll show you one. And I heard somewhere, and it seems to work, that if you take, after your tomato blossoms, and you can see that there's a little fruit there, take this little crusty bit off, and then you'll get a pretty bottom on your tomato. Because sometimes the blossom gets stuck there. Now that one dried up properly, but sometimes they don't dry up right, and they dry up all fanned out, and they stay stuck to the bottom of the fruit, and it defaces the bottom of the fruit. Doesn't harm it, but it makes the bottom look messy and scarred. It's kind of like how a belly button. Like this one. And worse. Even bad cat facing. Which I don't have an example of cat facing right now because I just pick those off when they're little. So you can see how big these brandywines are getting. But not all of them. Anyway, let me tell this dream. Sorry. Because somebody might not want to see a garden update. Today I had this dream Lord, help me remember this dream. Okay, I was in this factory. For some reason, I took this like factory job. Ooh, I think that's a squash bug. What is that? Oh man. I wish I had anyway, my spray. I got some spray that I use on them. I haven't been able to find it for a few days. So anyhow, for some reason I took this factory job. And I kind of took it on like a whim, cuz I didn't need the job. But I don't know if I was taking it like as a little second job, cuz it didn't pay very much. Probably like $12 an hour or something. So, but for some reason I took it, and I think I took it with a friend, I'm not sure. So it was in like a big factory or a warehouse or something. And they started talking about, I don't know if it was news reports or something like that. And they started talking about Omicron. Omicron, Omicron, Omicron. And I think I heard in the dream, like in my spirit, or I knew that I heard something say, it's worse. So they kept talking about cases, cases, cases. Omicron, Omicron. And every case, it was like Omicron. And they talk about another case, Omicron. Like they kept making a specificity that it was Omicron. And then I said, as soon as I started hearing all this stuff about these cases, like I said, I don't know if that was like news or what, but I was like, oh, here we go. I've said that so many times over the last 2 years. Here we go. Reason being the accumulation of different dreams that I've had basically since 2014 about this specific type of stuff. Everything from the homosexual agenda, the prices going up, the mark of the beast, injections, stuff like that. So as this stuff has started going forth, yeah, it's just been like this feeling of, here we go. Like, oh man, say you live with somebody who brags all the time and you're around them all the time, and every person that they meet or that you guys encounter that they have not bragged a specific thing to, and they just wait for fresh meat to tell all their accolades to, and you're around them all the time, you're hearing this over and over again, and you're seeing this like sickening thing, which bragging can really come off as sickening, especially if you really know what it is and you can see the person's heart that's doing it. Very prideful heart brags. And then the more prideful that person is, and it's more demonic. I can't really explain that, but it's just like, your eyes go back in the back of your head and you're like, oh boy, here we go again. So that's the feeling that I get when I see stuff like that hit the news. That not so much of the same feeling that you get when you see somebody bragging like that. You're just like, oh, you're so sick of it. But it's also, you see like the little tippy tip of it. The little tippy tip of it appears. But since I dreamed about it so much and so clearly, and the picture is so clear what's following behind it, I get the whole feeling. People just hear, oh, Omicron or second wave, and they're not knowing what's coming. But you know that it's all lockdowns all over again. And lockdowns that make those last lockdowns seem like you got called in from recess and then you got to go home at the end of the day. But this is different. So I had a dream probably like in 2016, 17, where I was looking at my phone and I started seeing news come across my phone, different videos, news stories, stuff popping up of all the stuff that I've been dreaming about. Now, at that time, this was all purely just dreams. But when I saw it on my phone in another dream, I had just had this feeling of dread. Like, it was like what I was seeing in the phone was reality coming to pass, because it was beginning to be reported on. And I had that horrible, sickening feeling. So I took it from that dream, like how I would feel when all this stuff that's just dreams, not just me dreaming it, but other people dreaming that kind of stuff too. That all those dreams, all those nightmares would become reality. And just here we are. Just point blank, here we are. I mean, God is real. Jesus Christ is the spirit of prophecy. That's God's mark. How we would know that it's Him. How we would know it was Him. So I was in this factory. They started talking about Omicron. And I was like, oh no, here we go. And this is what I said in the dream. I was like, oh boy, they're gonna, this is what I was thinking in the dream, and then I said it out loud. I said, they're going to lock us in this factory and not let us go home. They will not let us go home at night, saying it's for our own safety. And I want you to look up something called the Triangle Waste Factory. Triangle Waste Company. Oh my gosh, I just thought about that. Triangle Waste. Not waste as in trash, but waste as in, around your waist, your measurement. I think it's WAIST. Triangle Waste Company. Now, what that was, they made a point of teaching all of us about that in history. And it was during the era of industrialization and industry. And the formation of huge cities and companies in America. And I believe this place was in New York. And what they did was they wanted the young ladies, all women worked there, because this was some kind of a garment factory. And they made clothing or something like that. Shirts, or I don't know what they made, something like that. And they used sewing machines, so this was something considered women's work. Like secretaries used to all be women. Well, I don't know what they are now, but they probably still are mostly women. Just like most carpenters are men. So there's a such thing as gender. We're not the same. So in the Triangle Waste Factory, they has control over these women to the point where, for whatever their reasons were, they locked them in the building. And that was just their practice. Every day they locked them in the building. And so one day, the building burned down and all the exits were locked. And many people supposedly died because they were not able to get out. Reportedly died. I don't really have a reason to believe they didn't die, except for the fact that the media is and always has been controlled by Zionists, people with the agenda of creating a ruling governmental body to rule the entire world via like the UN from Israel. Okay, let me break this down. Take this away from speculation. To rule through the UN, through the reputation of neutrality and worldwide cooperation. Forgive me if I said globe during this video, because we don't live on a globe, because as the Bible tells us, the heaven and the heavens are above the earth. So above is above. God knows how to use the word around. So a worldwide dictatorial, unquestioned government through the power, authority, and reputation of the UN operated from 3333, which is the longitude and latitude of Israel. So this is a plan. The other day, I was lying in bed and I heard Cecil Rhodes in my spirit. Now, I heard of that name before. I believe that Norman Dodd mentioned that name. And I think he might have said like one or two sentences saying that Cecil Rhodes had the overt what do you call it, goal to reunite the USA back under England, back with England, to basically nullify the Declaration of Independence. Basically, nullify the Declaration of Independence and bring the U.S., which was nothing but a imperialistic colony. Now, imperialistic refers to an empire. So we were a colony of the British Empire, is what the United States was. That broke off and declared independence. However, at the highest levels, it was a two-sided coins, because in all of these wars, at some level, there's no enemies. There's only friends cooperating with each other, sacrificing their populations in wars to control them, to get their cooperation. If they go along, there's peace, maybe. But sometimes there's just war to terrify you. Sometimes there's just war to make money. Sometimes there's just war to make other agendas happen. So there may be some people within the government that actually think we're at war with another nation. But at the highest levels, there's no war. Just like, how are you in the Cold War? How are you at war with Russia? But you don't have a problem with the Russian, quote unquote, space station. So somehow, when it comes to fictitious space, we don't have a problem with the Russians being up over our head and rotating around the earth like a satellite 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. According to the book of Enoch, 364 days a year. Which, as you know, some years in our time, the year has 366 days. February 29th, which only exists every 4 years. So Cecil Rhodes had this goal to just nullify the Declaration of Independence. But the Declaration of Independence was a coordinated effort between Masons in England and Masons in America. Benjamin Franklin was not your friend. George Washington, not your friend. They didn't send their sons to die in the war. The people in England, the Masons in England and the Masons in America, the war was just a means to their ends. They wanted the United States to split off because there was going to be sort of a transfer of wealth, a handing off of the baton. A new headquarters. And then I guess their final headquarters will be ruling from Israel, once they bring in the religious component to the plan. So Cecil Rhodes, he was dedicated to this. And I think he's had like 7 wills. He had revised his will up until the 7th one. And up until the 5th will, he mentions a secret society. And his whole life was dedicated to the mission of this secret society. He was a flaming homosexual. He was a raging, open homosexual. Like, there's no debate about it. He was a homosexual. And he liked young men. And he would take them on trips. And he would, man, he would, his bait was all this money that he had. He would go get these, young men and he would introduce them to these lavish trips, lavish lifestyle. And he would call them his little lambs. And he had another word that he called them. Now, I looked all this up after I had that dream about him, but Norman Dodd did mention him and say that his life was dedicated to dissolving the Declaration of Independence and getting the U.S. back with England. So the Declaration of Independence it starts off like this. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds that have connected it to another. Something like that. And then it goes on to list the reasons why they want to separate from England. When in the course of human events. Isn't that ironic? Never feel insignificant because we are now in the course of human events. It becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected it to another. So Cecil Rhodes wanted to undo that. So and it could be, guys, that Benjamin Franklin and the founding fathers were an infiltration job. There were infiltrators into the movement for independence. COINTELPRO, shills. The way to beat the opposition is to lead the opposition. Same thing with the flat earth movement. The biggest names in the flat earth movement are shills. Absolute positive shills. And you can tell them by their religion. They're Buddhists and worse. If your reason for caring that the earth is not a round ball in the middle of a vast vacuumous space, which if you think about it, if we were a ball filled with air, which we are, and there was an endless, airless vacuum. You know, vacuum, like vacuum cleaner that sucks up stuff. So if space were out there and all around us, and it is a vacuum, what would it do to the air in the earth? What would be strong enough? The ozone layer that they claimed had a hole in it? If there was a, that's why you don't mention, that's why they had to get rid of the ozone layer hole, okay? Because the flat earth makes you question all their explanations. So if there were a hole in your ball, in the presence of a ginormous, inconceivable vacuum, what's going to happen to your ball? Think about that. There's a hole in your ball. Your ball has high pressure. There's pressure in the ball because we have air here. So just like the pressure inside of a beach ball or something is higher than out here where you're playing with your beach ball. Because you blew it up. You blew your beach ball up and trapped all that air inside there, and it's at a higher pressure than the air around it, and you seal it up, and then you pop open a hole. It's going to go flying all over the place just like a balloon until it's collapsed back into nothing. So that's why they had to get rid of the hole in the ozone layer. There's no pressure on the air in the earth to leave the earth. And it's not because of gravity. It doesn't make sense altogether. So that's why the devil's the author of confusion. His theories, in order to get you to accept all of these theories, sorry if that's wind is blowing on the microphone, but in order to get you to accept all of his theories, you have to believe in chaos rather than order. You have to believe in creation rather than a creator. Because he needs chaos and disconnected things that you just have to accept and swallow whole cloth, rather than an ordered system that makes sense from the beginning. And in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And that's all there is to it. So if I tell you a story, and my story is just all over the place, and you can't get any of the things to jive together, it just doesn't make any sense. I need to get you to believe that in general, things don't make sense. In general, you just don't know anything. You can't know anything for sure. The only things you can know for sure is something if you maybe get it on video. So if two people were on top of a roof, 15 stories up, and then on the 14th floor, you're on the 14th floor, and those people are up on the roof right above your head, you hear arguing, you hear yelling, you hear, "I'm going to push you off the roof." And you hear struggling, and then you see some guy come flying over the top, fly down past your window, and splat down onto the ground. Now, during the investigation, they found that the cameras were not turned on the top of the roof. So there was no camera evidence. There was no evidence. And you say, well, I know fella A pushed fella B off of that roof. I heard scuffling. I heard, I'm going to push you off the roof. I hear scuffling and I hear, no, get off of me. Let me alone. Ah! This is what they say. This is the type of ridiculous things that we hear. Well, maybe they were acting out a play. Well, you weren't there. We don't have any video evidence. So maybe there was a third person there. And the guy you're accusing was actually trying to save him from a third person. Maybe the man that fell was throwing his voice. And he actually jumped off the roof, but was trying to frame the first guy. So what they train us to do is to ignore things we see with our eyes, because we need an expert to come in and validate everything that we believe. We're not allowed to think for ourselves or come up with our own explanations based upon what we see and observe, based upon what we have experienced and can prove to ourselves. We have been trained to not question. And the only things that you can absolutely nail down is what you can taste and touch, and nope, that's the only stuff you can know. You got to have a video of it. Now we got Photoshop. You can't trust the video. So life will always come down to faith. Who will you believe? Whose report will you believe? We shall believe the report of the Lord. Who hath believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Why do we have faith? Because God prophesied to us. And we saw the things that he prophesied come to pass. And since we saw it with our own eyes, since we heard what was said before, and we know the devil is a liar, and we know the devil's the god of this world, and we know the devil gives authority in this world to whoever he chooses, who will follow his agendas, who will perform seances to get instructions, allow themselves to be filled to the brim and controlled by demons. Since we know that's who writes the media, what are you going to believe? What you see? Or are you going to believe what they tell you on the news? People are already starting to wear masks again. Makes my heart so sad. Because you just see one or two people here and there with a mask. What I see is lockdowns. What I see is this whole mess of sickening lies starting all over again. Maybe I'll do more about Cecil Rhodes. He's a disgusting figure. Diamonds are not rare. Cecil Rhodes made his fortune. He already came from a fabulously wealthy family. But he made his fortune in Africa with diamonds. And the key to his success with diamonds was to, one, create a market for them, and to bottleneck mining, shut down mines, buy up mines, so that he could control the quantity of diamonds that are released onto the market. Because diamonds were so plentiful in Africa. And you know, of course, when they come out of the ground, they don't look like that shiny rock. There's more diamonds than there are cubic zirconias. Diamonds were so plentiful in Africa that they didn't even have to dig them. They could walk along the ground and they picked them off the ground like rocks. So he had to shut all that down, buy all those places where it was like that up, buy up all his competitors, and then clamp down on the release into the market of diamonds, thereby creating scarcity and the illusion of scarcity of diamonds. They're not scarce. So also, I believe it was in Ukraine, there were diamonds, diamond mines. I'll have to look that up to make sure I'm telling you right. But I believe it was Ukraine, because it's been some years ago that I looked into it. But the name Cecil Rhodes did not stick out at that time. I didn't even remember that he was part of this, but because it was De Beers. For some reason, that was the name of the company, De Beers. It's disgusting. You ever heard of a little place in Africa, country called Rhodesia? Cecil Rhodes. So it's a disgusting human being. And ironically, his name is in the news. In Britain and in places in Africa. Because, you know, the whole let's tear down people's statues thing. They're like, let's get rid of Cecil Rhodes statues. But his name is being propped up, held up, and his reputation is being remodeled into a hero. Even in those places where they know who he is. Here, we don't know who he is. All we know him as is the author of the Rhodes Scholar. A Rhodes Scholar. A scholar of Rhodes. Watch the Norman Dodd video again. The goal of all of this is monopoly. To make you accept any and everything that they do because you don't have a choice. No more tricks, no more sleight of hand. They could just be out with it. We're locking you in. You just be a 24-hour slave. God help us. There's a scripture, I wish I can quote it. I'm going to try. It's in Habakkuk. Habakkuk only has 3 chapters, I believe. It says, I think it was the one that says, write the vision and make it plain, that they that hear it may run. In other words, write it, make it plain, so that people know what to do. And it says about the vision, it says, though it tarry, in other words, and though it lingers and hasn't come, Wait for it. Because it will come. I wish I could quote it. I'll put it in the description box or pin it in the comments. The more I think about it, I really think that my 2021 thing was just about the end of America and the beginning of the New World Order. And I just didn't really seek the Lord and just jumped out there. What's the word? On my own thinking of what it meant. Instead of confirming with the Lord. Anyway. Oh, here we go. It's terrible. God help us and lead us. God lead us meticulously in these final hours. Father, oh Father, lead and guide us in even our every breath. We depend on you. You are the only one we trust. We will follow you. We will not love our lives. We do not love our lives unto the death. Help us not to be cowardly or afraid, but to freely lay our lives down the way Jesus laid his life down. Because we know you're our witness that death is not the end. Death is the judgment passed upon all men, that even your Son came and fulfilled for us in that he became a man. So that we all must pass through that door. But by faith in you, because of who you've proven yourself to be, we know that it is not the end. This whole world is passing away. The stolen dominion that the devil has, he's coming to a close. We believe you, Lord. Help us to be faithful. In Jesus' name, amen.